Alright, well, haven't done a video in a little while, but I thought I kind of want to take a crack at something I've been looking at for a little while called The Reply. What is The Reply? Well, I see a lot of things on Twitter and Reddit occasionally that I think can't be talked about in 140 characters or in a lengthy Reddit post. So, I'll be calling some people out, sometimes I won't, sometimes I just want to foster discussion. But I figured this was the best way to do it, and at least bring some of these topics to light and give you some more information or discussion on them. So as you can see with my phone going off in the background, you can talk a little bit about Optic gaming. Will Optic dominate next year? I saw this on Reddit. I haven't credited the person on Reddit yet because I'm not sure how that works, whether they want their name called out or not. But if they do, feel free to contact me and I will put it in the description box below and continue to do so in future videos. But, of course, let's talk about the topic at hand. Will Optic dominate next year? Now, Smart Money says yes. Smart Money says, of course, they will do very well next year. They are currently the #1 rated team. They are the world champions and 4 of the most winningest players in Call of Duty history. So, why have I made a video to talk about this very brief subject? Well, for several reasons. One, I think this topic is a little bit deeper than people are thinking about, and it does lend itself to a very important hypothetical question of how long will Optic be at the top 4 and how long will these players be juggernauts? Now, in almost every single case of players being at the top, we have seen them drop off over time. The exception, of course, is some of the players we are now talking about, Scump, Crimsix, Karma, and Formal to maybe a lesser degree because he hasn't been as around as some of the others. But every single one of those players is, of course, a legend and a guaranteed Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Now, talking about these players for next year, we've got to talk about the transition back to boots on the ground. The great thing about these players, of course, is they have done very well in that scenario, and their individual raw talent will, of course, drive them through. But I do think they have a better attribute than that. An attribute that I think might be finite, but should be good enough for now. And that's the hunger to win, the drive to win, the not getting complacent with how they are doing. Now, some of the players here, I know players like Crimsix, I've been talked about his attitude towards gaming for a long time, and personally I really think that he is probably one of the best for it. The reason for this is the fact that Crimsix just has this unbelievable hunger to win, and he hates being proved wrong. Now, the great thing about this is the other players have shared this as well. We've talked about Scump, whack when he left Optic for that 2-week stint with Envious. One of the reasons was he just wanted to win, and he felt like he had to make this move. He went back eventually, and thank God, right? But people like Formal was only about the win. He's very focused on that at the same time here. The thing about this is, though, is how long does that go on for? How long do you keep being that hungry? Because as we know, players do tend to drop off a little bit. Players can get complacent. Players can fall out of favour. And sometimes they maybe just get a little bit worse as they age or grow a little bit older. So you've got to ask yourself, when is that point for Optic? Don't think it's next year, fortunately. I think they probably won't be as dominant as some of the runs they've had. I would suggest that 80% of the wins next year would probably be about right. It wouldn't surprise me to see them win another World Championship. It really wouldn't. Just from this point. But I definitely don't think we're going to see them win every single tournament next year. There's too much talent in the scene. There's too many players putting it together. I know Nadeshot made a video here saying that he was shocked at some of the players trying to kind of play together again, and the rosters coming together he didn't think would really challenge Optic's dominance. I think personally, for me, he does have a good point. Some of these rosters are certainly going to fail, and also with the roster locks coming in here, if we don't see teams able to challenge Optic from the first couple of tournaments, once those roster locks start to hit in for some of these events here, we're going to see very little movement again in the scene. But I don't think that it's going to be an easy ride all the way. Some of the new rosters are certainly going to have that first-time chemistry. They're certainly going to have the ability to go toe-to-toe here. We don't know what kind of game World War II is going to be yet. Exactly how it's going to play out, what it's going to favour, who is going to really perform on this game, and what teams seem to click from the outset. Obviously, Optic have all the constitutional parts to kind of go, whoop, raw playing ability, gun skill, veterancy, everything about Optic gaming, we automatically know they're going to be a good team. I don't really expect to ever place them outside of the top 3, and I think at the very least they will do as well next year as they did this year, which is 4 events, I think, plus the World Championship, the big one. Coming into it, of course, they are going to be the favourites for the first event, but I am very curious about when do Optic drop off? When is that curtail? When is it going to be no longer talking about Optic? Now, we've had it, Impact had their small event run, then we had Complexity, so that's the EG era. Now we have the Optic era, which is massive in scope, right? We're talking about across 3 games now. They have been the Optic era of this just unbelievable team. Is that going to happen for another 5 years? And you're looking at me now probably going, well, probably not, right? 5 years is a long time. But if not 5 years, how long, right? You're going to be talking about, is Optic Gaming going to be in 2 years? Well, yeah, they probably still will be up there if they're all still playing. You got to start thinking about maybe some of these players want to retire. Maybe some of these players don't need to play or don't need to put in these 16 hours right now. It's no secret that the Optic Gaming have a very stable financial place for the majority of them, right? We all know, you don't go out and buy nice cars like that if you're struggling for a bit of money. Now, I'm not saying that they're just going to give it all up and they don't want to play anymore. I'm just saying that once it stops becoming your main motivation to win because you're desperate for it and you're super competitive, and when you've won 20 odd tournaments or 30 tournaments or 40 tournaments, it becomes just another thing here. What have you got left to prove? How does that hunger continue? You got 4 of the most winningest players in Call of Duty history on one team. I think they are the 4 most winningest players in Call of Duty history. It's absolutely incredible just how much these guys have done. But how long does that go on for? How long do they want to keep doing that? How long do they want to be putting in 12 hours, stressing out, taking the losses, going for it? I don't think forever, but I do think it's certainly something that can happen next year, maybe the year after. But at some point, one of them at least, is going to go, I'm done here, or they have a bad run of events and someone has to break up from this team, and then we start this all over again here. Who are the super players in Call of Duty? Right now we have them all in one team. So yes, smart money is on Optic, dominating for the foreseeable future. But that domination probably won't be as complete as it has been in some previous years. It probably won't be 100% of the tournaments next year. I think 80% would be an kind of a top limit for it. I can see them winning more than they did last year, but I can't see them winning all of the tournaments. Simply because I think there's a lot of people now kind of entering the scene. Europe's at least come up there a little bit, and one of my favourite games from the World Championship was that epic game with Splice versus Optic Gaming. And I'm curious. I think it's very curious, this question. How will Optic dominate next year? Because we've seen in other esports, teams at the top drop off, then we've come back with a different roster and they drop off, and up and down and this and so on and so forth. So, I don't know. It's a great question. I thought we need to dive into it here, and I really wanted to bring up that extra point of how long does this continue for? Is it going to be forever? Obviously not. But if not forever, then when? Well, I hope that kind of explains a little bit here and what we're talking about, and I'm sure some of you have some questions and comments for yourselves. Feel free to put them in the thing below, and we'll try and reply to as many as possible. I'm hoping that this kind of fosters discussion going forward, and at least gives you my opinion on what I think is going to happen. But this has been The Reply. See you next time.